All right, on my clock, it says it's 1 o'clock, so I think we should begin. So welcome everyone to the implementation tips and the examples of positive impact of student learning session. Hopefully, my screen won't share. Can you see my screen?
We can see your screen, Aleesha.
It won't move to the next slide. That's not good. There we go. All right, so I'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is part of the traditional territory of the Chippewa, Ottawa, Potawatomi, and Delaware nations. Each day we greet and honor the original inhabitants of the land and strive to strengthen our relationship with them. I am thankful to be welcomed on these lands in friendship. We are all treaty people, and acknowledging that reminds me of the important connection we have to the land where we learn and work. I live under Treaty Number 1, also known as the Longwoods Purchase. I am grateful for the rivers, lakes, and streams that surround us. I use these bodies of water for recreation with my friends and family. The open spaces on this land provide me with places to walk, garden, and enjoy time outdoors. I pledge to care for this land and water and accept our responsibility to take what we need and leave enough for others so that it can be enjoyed for all future generations. So on my screen, you can see the pictures that I'm sharing. Those are flowers from my garden over the summer. The top picture is a sunset when we went to a cottage north of here. And then this is one of my favorite beaches. This is the Ipperwash Beach that we enjoy a lot over the summer. All right, so to begin the session, what is phonemic awareness? So phonemic awareness is an understanding that spoken words are made up of individual sounds called phonemes. A child who has phoneme proficiency is able to isolate sounds, blend sounds into words, segment a word into sounds, and manipulate sounds in words. So I'm not sure how many of you joined our Heggerty session this morning, but Marjorie went through Heggerty, the curriculum. She spoke quite a bit about it. So I'm going to tie it in, I guess, directly more into French and how the use of the Heggerty curriculum in our French immersion classrooms is very beneficial to our students. So we know that starting from K-2 is kindergarten really is the perfect time for that phonological awareness. So that is when we are teaching our students the foundation. It's for developing proficient readers no matter what language they're in. And we all need the phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, phonics instruction, and word study so that we become proficient readers. So the Heggerty curriculum, I'm sure as you know, is oral and auditory. So it's not working with print yet. It is going through, as I jump ahead, sorry, wrong screen there. These are the curriculums that are in your building. So you hopefully have seen a copy or have been using them in your classroom. It follows the daily instructions of how you're going to teach all the skills necessary as you teach your students the letter sounds and to read. And I'm not sure if anyone else wants to join in or if I've missed anything to go with Heggerty. I'm not sure how deep I need to go into Heggerty in this session. So I think I'll just tie it directly into Heggerty in French immersion. So there's a lot of research. I'm not sure if you recognize the name Nancy Wise, but she is a consultant that specializes in French immersion, and she's an advocate for inclusion of FI students in diverse learning needs. She's done a lot of research and many studies, and a lot of the common and key finding is that systematic and explicit phonological awareness training in English improves the French reading achievement of students. So research has suggested that a phonological-based intervention in English can effectively address phonological awareness deficits and facilitate reading acquisition for French immersion children who may be at risk for later reading difficulties. Numerous investigations involving bilingual early readers have shown that phonological awareness in a child's first or second language is closely linked to both phonological awareness and reading achievement in another language. So that is why we are using the Heggerty curriculum in English to support our French immersion students as well. Why use Heggerty? The Heggerty Phonemic Awareness Curriculum provides everything you need to teach daily phonemic awareness lessons in 12 minutes or less. So these lessons are not meant to be long. They are even 10 minutes, 8 to 10 minutes a day. They're very easy to implement. The curriculum is very easy to follow. It's a step-by-step guide. It's a 35-week program, like I mentioned, of daily lesson plans that provide a high level of explicit modeling and student engagement. Each level of the Heggerty Phonemic Awareness Curriculum focuses on 8 phonemic awareness skills, along with 2 additional activities to develop letter and sound recognition and language awareness. So with the Heggerty, the primary curriculum, it's daily opportunities to develop phoneme awareness and proficiency through rhyme, phoneme isolation, blending syllables and phonemes, segmenting syllables and phonemes, adding syllables and phonemes, deleting syllables and phonemes, and substituting. So there are many, many skills that you are teaching on a daily basis if you are doing this program, and it is all very beneficial so that we are getting our students prepared to begin to be proficient readers. So I'm not going to do all the talking in our session today. We have had a lot of positive feedback within our board for those that are implementing Heggerty in their classrooms. I'm going to invite Steph up, who is an FI FDK teacher, to share how she is implementing the curriculum in her classroom. And if you want to share some of the positive stories, that would be wonderful. So welcome, Steph. Thank you for joining us today.
Awesome. Thanks, Aleesha. You can hear me okay? I switched from my laptop to my iPad because I had some trouble this morning with my laptop. So thanks, Aleesha, for asking me today to speak about Heggerty. We've been using it, my ECE partner and I have been using it. We are going to be starting week 7 on Monday. I spoke with Aleesha on the phone about this, and I'm not going to lie, I was pretty skeptical bringing Heggerty into the French immersion classroom because it's an English program. And I thought, I'm not quite sure how this fits. How is this going to work? How does it make sense to do it in FI? I know some of the other girls in my school were using it. So we thought, okay, let's give it a go and see what happens. My teaching partner and I, we watched some of the YouTube videos first so that we had a good handle of the gestures that went along with Heggerty, and we've been using those. And we introduced it to the kids as, we're going to teach a new program and you're going to be a Heggerty hero. So every day that we use the program, we put up on our visual schedule Heggerty heroes, and they know when they come inside that that's what we're going to be doing. I'm happy to report after 6 weeks, I'm no longer skeptical. I've seen the benefits now of it in the FI classroom, especially in FDK, and I'm really, really enjoying the program. The kids are really enjoying the program. So the benefits that we are seeing and how it's going cross-curricular into French are multiple. We flip back and forth. So one week I teach the lesson and the next week my ECE, who's English speaking, teaches the lesson, so that the kids are hearing both of us and seeing both of us present the material in their first language for most of them. We're starting to see it now pop up in our morning meeting in French class. So when we're doing some of the calendar activities and the weather activities, the kids are actually segmenting and then sweeping with their vocabulary. We've seen kids who are adding it to their pieces of art. So I was telling Aleesha this morning, I have 2 little girls who will sit for hours and draw, and we've been trying to get them to add writing to their drawings, and they're starting now to add those words themselves. It's pretty interesting to watch them do the as they're drawing and writing their words. So we are starting to see it come over into French, which is really interesting. We do ours every day at 2:05 when the kids come in from their second nutrition break and recess. So we come in, we have a drink of water, we bring them over to the carpet and call them it's Heggerty hero time. Who's ready to be a Heggerty hero today? and then we get started. It is only taking between 8 and 12 minutes. The first couple times we did it, we were about 15 to 20. Once we got it down pat, we've been able to scaffold and kind of pull back a little bit with our instructions. And now we're able to just start to finish 8 to 12 minutes.
Perfect. That's great. I'm glad that you're seeing an impact and that you found it easy to implement as well. That's what I said. The curriculum is very well laid out. It tells you exactly what to say, what to do. And it's nice to hear that kindergarten can sit through that without any trouble, right? So it's definitely, and if they're engaged, that's wonderful.
The only thing that we're not doing from the Heggerty program is the second last step with the holding up the cards, because a lot of the letters sounds are different in French. So, and the words, right? So it's really hard to be teaching the A sound with apple when in French we call it a pomme. So we've gotten away from using the cards and we just skip over that step. So instead of doing the 8 skills, we're just doing 7.
Perfect. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I believe Carrie Lynn is also on our call. So she's one of our principals. She's a principal at Sir John Moore, and she also has some positive stories of things that are happening in her building. So Carrie Lynn, are you available to participate in our discussion right now?
I sure am.
Okay.
What I was going to share is just from the principal perspective. I had a mom reach out to me to talk to me about something completely unrelated from the classroom. But when she had emailed me at first to inquire about her child, she had thrown in, also, can you let me know if speech has started? And so I had looked into the speech, and when I had called her back, I had addressed the issue that she had originally reached out for, and then had said that no, speech hadn't started, but had asked her, said we would look into it. And she had remarked at how surprised she was, because she had noticed a really dramatic improvement in her child's articulation at home. And she was quite dumbfounded that speech had not begun at school. And the more we were talking, I had looked up what was going on, and sure enough, her child not only was getting Heggerty in the classroom, which is a French immersion classroom, but he was part of the tiered intervention group with Rebecca Wilson. And so we were talking about it, and this is a mom who does, it sounds like she speaks French at home, because she said she has noticed it in his sentences at home in English, but that she has noticed it as well in French at home as well. But she said that it was absolutely remarkable, that it was a drastic improvement in his articulation at home, and was positive that speech had been started at school. And in fact, it was just through Heggerty and through tiered intervention and the whole class instruction. So while the intent of it is not, obviously, we're not speech and language pathologists, but through the focus on, really breaking down the letters and focusing on those sounds, those phonemes, the improvement was something that in such a short time frame that for the mom to comment is just amazing from my perspective.
Mm-hmm. For sure. That's great. Thank
Superintendent Hazard, jump in. What did I do wrong? What did I say?
No, nothing. I feel like I need to say that results may vary.
Well, yeah.
But I think that that nothing is at this time required for phonemic awareness. We have recommendations and guidelines. We are recommending that Heggerty be done in English in the French immersion kindergarten to grade 2 classes. And the reasoning for that is, and I want to just take this time and hello to everybody. It's great to see you. And but I do want to share the reasoning is that one is that very few, if any, of our students are French as a first language or Francophone. We look to build this. We are excited and we want to strengthen the French immersion program. That's a key part of the conversation. And by improving phonemic awareness in language 1, it improves language 2 and it translates across. So I think that's kind of a really key part. The other part is that one thing that that occurs over time is often students in the French immersion program, when they get to English, often may be a bit delayed in their reading skills in English as they get into that grade 3 area. That's a pretty common item, and often many students get outside support for that. We think this is a key building block that could be helpful within that. And the third area is the one that we've heard as well from Carrie Lynn, and I know there's other examples, is by focusing on those sounds, it helps it has a potential. I don't want to, again, that's why I say results may vary, but we actually have multiple examples of this across our district. And actually they're mainly in French immersion. And I have a little theory on that because it's so focused on just the phonemic awareness of French immersion. We're not doing the phonics in English or anything else, just that phonemic awareness. Is that some of the articulation errors that a student may be making when they're speaking, they're now able to hear or they're aware of, and they've corrected, done that or improved the sound when they're generating the sound. So their perception of the sound has been improved, and I've had some coaching on this language. Perception of the sound improved, and then that's likely a potential impact on that as well. Where does this go? We don't know. As a district, we're figuring it out. Does this? We're looking for evidence-based practices that have impact. We know the screener is really key, and we continue to look through and investigate what does this look like going forward. And other districts that are 100% French immersion, French language in the early years are doing something similar with Heggerty. So we did a bit of kind of a scan at the time. So I did want to just address that. I'm happy to answer some of those questions that see Amy. All of these phonological awareness skills can also be developed in the French language, but other resources, programs are being looked at to strengthen these skills in French. So we are looking at a variety. We have a chart. We're working through this. The Ontario Human Rights Commission talks about evidence based. We have a lot of things that are kind of in the initial stages of that. Some of them really, honestly, flip into the phonics really fast. They're actually much more phonics programs than they are phonemic awareness programs. And that's a really key distinction. So we're working on that, Amy, and digging into that and seeing what does that look like. Also being aware that with our students, what are we seeing as we go forward here? We're using our data, investigation, and we're also listening. We don't have all the recommendations yet from ministry on how to implement items in the Ontario Human Rights Commission's Right to Read report. So we continue to work through that process. We understand that this is why we put it as a recommendation, not as a requirement at this time, to begin to figure out what does that look like. We've seen some pockets of this, and that was one of the purposes of today. But I don't need to take the whole time there, Aleesha and Steph and Megan and Carrie Lynn. I'm gonna mute myself and start.
No, thank you, Ben. I think maybe we'll just open it up. Does anyone else have any other positive stories or any questions about Heggerty in their classrooms, or how to use it, or maybe we can share some tips. If you want to unmute yourself and speak, or use the chat, whatever you're comfortable doing.
While we're waiting for people to contribute, I would love to contribute as a parent of French immersion. Both of my kids went through French immersion, and both of them struggled in reading and for ages, and they didn't develop the love of reading. And even as a teacher, I read to them every night. I provided what I was, supposed to as a parent at home, and maybe even above and beyond, but it wasn't enough. And I myself wasn't doing phonemic awareness. I wasn't using a program like this. And I really believe that it is the missing piece. I really think it's going to be important. And in French immersion too, when they're little and that's their anchor language, They have the vocabulary of those words that they're saying. It's not a vocabulary learning activity when they're applying those sounds and segmenting. I think they have something to attach it to in their minds already. And I think that's the importance of the English at this stage, to just do that, 8 to 12 minutes or 15 minutes a day, even if it's in English. And I know you're struggling to get French heard constantly in class and spoken. But I do think there will be leaps ahead with this program. Personally, from my experience with my kids going through, I really think it's the missing piece, and I hope more people will try it out and see the benefits.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share? Questions you may have?
While we're waiting, we had a fabulous session with Marjorie from Heggerty this morning. I know many of you were part of that. If you didn't have an opportunity to join that session, I will be sending out the recording that we have for 30 days to principals, along with some of the resources that she was sharing. So you can be looking for that to be passed along from your principal. If you don't receive it, you can always reach out to me as well. I know Marjorie shared as part of that learning this morning that in any alphabetic, any language that has the alphabetic principle, that these skills definitely transfer between languages. So we are hearing that from many different voices in this area. So.
All right, it's pretty quiet.
In the chat, Clancy has said, I have a student who says he uses Heggerty at home as well, and he's much more fluidly reading the lower levels, and I'm excited to see how much more he will advance. So, and she also wanted to mention that he's ESL, an English language learner. For the sound cards, I alternate between French and English. One day we'll do them in French and another day we'll do them in English. Students need to have strong reading skills in their first language in order to be proficient in a second. I agree.
Which in our students are coming from English homes, right? Like most of our students,
Majority, yeah.
English is their first language. So doing a program like Heggerty will only help them later on and to help learn a second language as well.
Hi there. Can I interject for a moment?
Yeah,
Kendra.
hi, Kendra.
Two things. So I don't want to create an argument by any means. I am going to say something 100% positive. So I'll start with that. A colleague of mine, because it's really only an issue for grade 1 and 2, right? Because there's not supposed to be any English time. And I've found that a solution to that is teaching it at the end of the day. So if you're worried about throwing off your whole routine for the day and having kids end up speaking to you in English as you're carrying on, I know another colleague of mine has had success doing it at that end of the day, which I know Steph Dunlop kind of said she does it after recess. So it's not starting the day off in English for those little ones, that makes it a little bit challenging. So I do think that's a good solution to that. But I will say that students don't necessarily need to read in their first language in order to be proficient. And I have witnessed this in my own household as a mother, because my children go to French first language school. We do speak English at home. We also speak French. I never did speak French at home though, until my kids started school. So obviously I'm able to offer a bit more support. However, my daughter learned how to read in English or in French before she learned how to read in English. So it does go back and forth. So I don't think it's a one or the other. It's perhaps more student-based than that. I don't think that we can say though that students can't learn their second language confidently before they learn their first language in terms of reading. But yes, I do think that there's definitely lots in Heggerty that there's to take away in terms of the structure and asking kids even throughout their lessons, the beginning sounds, the medial sounds, the end sounds, just a lot of that terminology is amazing. And I think it is going to be a good tool, and I look forward to finding a French equivalent.
And I think, Kendra, what you're speaking to very eloquently there is the transfer of these skills between languages, whether you were doing it in French and transferring to English, or English transferring to French. And as Ben mentioned, we are investigating what those evidence-based phonological awareness programs are in French. We're not there yet. They're just not as well developed as the English ones. So not saying that we won't go there, we're just not there yet. So for now, knowing about that transfer of these skills between languages, the recommendation is to be implementing the English Heggerty phonemic awareness program. So thanks for sharing, Kendra.
I'm just monitoring the chat. I see that many of our teachers are using it near the end of the day, which is perfect, right? You do it when it works in your time, whatever part of the day works for you, as long as you're doing it, as long as you're doing that 8 to 10 minutes a day. You do it what works for you. I'm just trying to see if there's any other questions I missed.
I see Brender's had, I'm not sure your first name, has mentioned that the majority of your students in your class, English is not their anchor language. And I am the ELL support teacher now, and I'm seeing that in a lot of classes that like recently I just saw students who are on their 4th language in the early grades. And yeah, that's it. English is not their first language. And still getting the benefit of that specific listening time to hear the sounds in English or French words, which is what they may also be functioning in. But the letters are the same. The sounds, for the most part, are the same. We know that some are not, but it's a good background. I'm seeing benefits for all in just understanding the sounds in words. The transferable skills, like we said.
And we do have Erica online with us, Erica Hazard from Speech and Language. I don't know, Erica, if you had anything further that you wanted to comment on regarding anything that any of the questions that have come up this morning or this afternoon.
All right, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, and I'm back. I'm up. Hi. So I'm a speech language pathologist, and this is so exciting to hear about all this phonemic awareness stuff, because our department has been working on phonemic awareness with our students for the past 20 years. So that tier 3 intervention. So this is excellent that the phonemic awareness is going into tier 1 in the classroom. A couple of things that I was kind of hearing about. One, when Megan was talking about, kind of we haven't done this before, and she was kind of talking about, her kids, and she was reading reading to her kids, doing what she does to help support. When we think back to Scarborough's reading rope, phonemic awareness really is like the first building block for decoding skills. It's not the only one, but it's that beginning step. And really for years, and what I've been told in Teachers College, that this beginning step is not told to teachers, right? So they're not able to instruct that into their classrooms. So hopefully with this, this awareness through the Right to Read Commission, that we're able to, help teach these kids that first step. The other thing that I thought was really good to hear is, I think it was Steph, the teacher who was commenting, the first teacher was commenting about the first, her using it in the classroom, is that, she did all these steps except the sound cards and the letter cards. That's completely okay, because that's phonics, and Heggerty does explain that when you're matching that letter sound correspondence, or when you're matching that word to a letter, that is the phonics part. right? And they do explicitly teach that. So that's not the phonemic awareness part. So it's completely okay if you're, for that phonics part for Heggerty to be like, okay, not in my French immersion class, right? And then you have your other phonics, French immersion, French materials, right? But it's for the phonemic awareness. Those are the skills to target. So to go, oh, I'm going to pass this thing on Heggerty. Well, yeah, if it's a letter sound correspondence, of course, that's a phonics thing, not a phonemic awareness. So that was a good call.
Mhm. Very good. Thanks, Erica.
Another thing I wanted to say, Aleesha, just real quick is one of the kind of positives that happened in my room just on Thursday when we were doing calendar and we were talking about, hier a été, aujourd'hui c'est jeudi. And one of my little girls actually went like this and she went, jeudi, jeudi. And then she said, she put her hand up in the sky and she said, I can spell that. And she went, and she spelled she came up to the board and she wrote it on the smart board. She left out the U in jeudi, of course, because she was going sound by sound, but it's really interesting to see how they're transferring those skills into French. But even in my morning meeting, like I say, we're now seeing this all the time. We're seeing a thumbs up or a thumbs down. We're seeing a lot of that word rhymes with, if something that they've heard. So they're really liking the program. And again, I know a lot of you are commenting you're doing it at the end of the day. I have my prep at the end of the day, so it works out for me. When they come in from recess, I start it. By the time I get started, it's 2:15 and we get it done. And then we have a brain break and then the prep teacher comes in. So it's kind of a nice segue for her as well. And that's kind of how we're making it work.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's very powerful, right? When they're doing what you're doing, they're kind of following the structures and how you're teaching it. So that's great. So that one, there was a question in the science reading presentation this morning by LifeLit. The presenter talked about working with bilingual students. There's Spanish. Okay, so she said when teaching them English, you need to build the two skills in the language you were trying to teach them. I'm wondering, what about we think about teaching these skills in French? Well, I think you're going to do both, right? You're going to do the Heggerty in English, but you're still teaching them in French as well. You're still going over French sounds or vocab, and we do already have programs in place. So it's not that you're not teaching them in French, you're just also teaching them with the English curriculum, which will make those skills stronger. Right? Like pratique, there's one called Pratique Phonemique. That is a great program. I have discussed, or we have all discussed it as the board, but it's not evidence-based yet. So it is one that is definitely on the list that we are considering, but we are going through the best program to support our students. And that we are very aware that that is being used in our buildings, but that is, right now, it's not evidence-based. So it's not one that we will be, I guess, suggesting, or the direction, Carla, is that correct to say?
I think, Kelly, absolutely you can do this in French and it's going to transfer to English as well. I think it comes down though to, the right to read report saying it needs to be evidence-based. We need to be developing this over a scope and sequence that, is systematic and explicit. So I think it comes down to, do we have that program at this point in French that we know is evidence-based, that is built along a scope and sequence of explicit and systematic instruction? I just don't think we're quite there yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I see you, Amy posted the 1-minute activities. I'm assuming that's the Limestone District. They're great activities as well, but that is, again, it's a research-based. We are still waiting to find an evidence of impact program. Who else wrote about decodable text? Yes, we do have decodable text, but we're not there yet. So that is one thing that will come in time once we have a plan on how they will be used in classrooms.
We also have purchased decodable texts in English, but we are not rolling those out either. We're working through this one step at a time, beginning with phonological phonemic awareness, and we're still doing a lot of learning and working out a plan regarding what it looks like in phonics. So we're just not there yet.
Mhm. So there was a couple other ones about, yeah, scope and sequence with decodable texts for the classroom. And do we have supports in French coming? So yes, so we will support you, but we are just not there yet. So we're starting with the Heggerty, starting with that curriculum, and we will definitely add as we find the proper program, I guess, the best program for you to use.
I have a question looking at these. Jen Kurtz, you said that you've been using the 8 Heggerty skills in your grade 1 classroom, 100% in French with great success. So I'm just wondering, what words do you use for that? Do you find the equivalent in French for what's on the list, or are you finding a similar short word, or how do you decide?
Yeah, I started last year. A colleague of mine shared pratique phonétique, and so they have all the words already found in French. Then if I skip to Monday, week 4, and it says, what is the initial sound? And it gives you a word list. I simply say mur, and then my students say or I say tap, and my students say t. So just off the top of my head, I can kind of just pick a word that's going to satisfy that skill. Hope that makes sense.
Okay, so similar sounds from the English list. Do you have visual supports with those words for the students who may not have learned the word yet?
No, they're very simple words like sac, mur, lac. And often I might refer to the same words, dans, so they get to know the words, or I act out the word.
Okay.
Day after day.
Okay, so a gesture then is the visual support. That's an idea, yeah. I'm thinking across ELL and FSL right now, so.
Why are the decodable texts not in classrooms for those who are ready and willing to use them, especially when they are good for students and students will be successful with them? Did you want to answer that, Carla?
Sorry,
need.
can I just jump in?
Yes.
Jen Kurtz is actually a teacher at my school. And so Jen, I just want to ask, because I was in your class the other day, do you not also do Heggerty though in English with your students in addition to what you're saying?
Sometimes I will, or if I find a word isn't coming to my head, quickly. I just thought because you were in my room, I would show you en anglais. But normally, yeah, we roll with it in French because it's all oral and they know those simple words. So I do find, I've seen evidence of improvement. Like they're like, oh, madame, that word rhymes with that word. Because they're picking this out more and more, even though it's en français.
So I'm just wondering, I don't know, Erica, if maybe you have any, if you want to jump in just with the speech and language piece there, if you have any information about that, because I know one of the things that we've talked about, and I know that Superintendent Hazard has brought it up, and I want to make sure that we're talking about the idea that the evidence-based piece, but the speech and language piece as well, but also the fact that our students, the majority of them are not Francophone, right? And so we want to make sure that what we're doing in classrooms is strengthening the English literacy skills and how that relates back if we're changing the words and how that connects. And I don't know the speech and language piece that connects with that. So can you jump in here and maybe give us some guidance?
Sure, sure. So what I'm hearing is, so phonemic awareness skills translate across all languages. So you can identify, isolate, blend, segment phonemes in any oral language. And even in ASL, you can do it. So the purpose of using Heggerty is really because of the Ontario Human Rights Commission, the Right to Read inquiry, is they outline, they require evidence-based practice. Heggerty is evidence-based. So that's why the Heggerty's used. So are you able to, you know, to go, you know, what's the, qu'est-ce que c'est le premier son de tuk? The response is t, not t. That is, you know, that's, they're identifying the first sound. That's appropriate. But what this systematic program is evidence-based. So, and that's really what the Right to Read inquiry is outlining. So can you do phonemic awareness skills in other languages? Yeah, you can. But the reason why Heggerty was chosen was because it's evidence-based. Does that answer your question, Carrie Lynn?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, and Amy, we have lots of eager beavers out there in both English and French who are you know, asking for decodable books. Why are we not putting them out there? Whenever we release those materials, we need to have a plan around support and professional development, and we are still figuring out what that looks like and doing our own learning and making sure that we have a good handle on that. And we're not quite there yet.
When do you think we will be there? It's going to take time, but
I don't know.
we can't rush it. I don't know. We seem to be behind many other boards in this area. The other boards are using more research-based. We're truly just waiting for more evidence-based, right, impact.
Doing one step at a time and making sure we're really doing it well before moving on to that next step.
Yeah.
Okay, Aleesha, thank you.
All right, I think we did. Thank you everyone for joining us. Yeah. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Bye. Thank you, Steph, for presenting and sharing. Carrie,
Thanks, Aleesha.
thank you.